Today, Matt Walsh Show, the terrorism epidemic continues, and it's only getting worse. It's time to be brutally honest about this problem and how to solve it. And we will have that conversation today on the Matt Walsh Show. What started as an idea is now the podcast and business blasting through your earbuds. Launching your own business is pretty much on everyone's bucket list, but most people let it collect dust right next to learn a language and get abs. Stop hiding behind lame excuses like, I don't have the skills, I can't do it alone. Turn those what-ifs into bold why-nots with Shopify backing your ideas. They've got the tools you just need to take the chance. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. We even use it for our own DailyWire shop to make sure things are running smoothly and efficiently so you can all get the goods. You might be asking, what if I can't design a website or I'm worried people haven't heard of my brand? Not a problem. Shopify's got you covered from the start with beautiful, ready-to-go templates that match your brand style and help you find your customers through easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And if you need a hand with everyday tasks, their AI tools created specifically for commerce can help enhance product images, write descriptions, and more. Plus, their award-winning customer support is available 24/7 to share advice if you ever get stuck. Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Walsh. Go to shopify.com/Walsh, shopify.com/Walsh. When you're bombarded with nonstop lies and propaganda about a particular event, especially a disturbing one that involves the murder of children, it can be useful to take a step back and talk about something that no one else is talking about. If nothing else, it can help you gain some context for what just took place. And to that end, let's briefly discuss what happened last summer in the affluent town of Braintree, Massachusetts. Several girls between the ages of 9 and 17 were watching a film at the AMC movie theater. They were there to see the Ryan Reynolds movie that just came out called If. And that's when, according to police, a man named Jared Revisa ran into the theater and stabbed the girls. And in an interview, one of the girls later told investigators that he, quote, laughed at us. He sounded like the Joker and ran out. But Jared Revisa wasn't done. After that mass stabbing within an hour, he allegedly stabbed 2 employees at McDonald's before urinating in the drive-thru. A witness compared Jared's appearance to Jack Nicholson's character in The Shining. And eventually he was arrested, at which point authorities determined that he may have been responsible for an unrelated homicide as well. So this guy was, a real asset to the local community, to put it mildly. What's interesting about this case is that, remarkably enough, you can read a dozen news articles about Jared Revisa, and you'll never once see anything mentioned about transgenderism. The Vineyard Gazette, which serves as the official magazine of Martha's Vineyard, wrote a deep dive into the case without once using the word transgender. So to give another example, here's a report from the local CBS news station. Watch.
The man suspected in a series of terrifying attacks made his first appearance in court today. Jared Revisa is accused of a series of stabbings on Saturday at a movie theater in Braintree and at a McDonald's in Plymouth. WBZ's Louisa Moeller spoke with one of the victims.
We briefly saw Jared Revisa in court with shoulder-length bleach blonde hair in a jumpsuit. The prosecutor asked for him to be held without bail, but the defense said he needs a competency evaluation, so he will stay here until he's seen by a doctor. You can see him in the video here. The 26-year-old from Chilmark, Martha's Vineyard, is accused of stabbing 6 people Saturday. Prosecutors say he pulled up to the Plymouth rest stop, got out of his Porsche, publicly urinated, then stabbed a man at the McDonald's drive-thru. After that, he's accused of going inside and behind the McDonald's counter and stabbing another employee. Later, police say he slashed 4 girls at an AMC theater in Braintree. And just a short time ago, he was formally named as a suspect in a homicide in Deep River, Connecticut. Police there said he threw a shovel through a window of a home there. And when police arrived, they found the body of a 70-year-old man.
Now, there's no curiosity about what motive this man might have to go on a stabbing spree in which he butchered children and killed someone. They don't explain why he looks the way he does. They don't talk about his social media posts where he's dressed like a woman. As best I can tell, a grand total of 1 local news outlet, just one, reported that Jared Revisa was, quote, a transgender person who identifies as a woman. Now, multiply this story by about 1,000, and you begin to get a sense for the massive blind spot that exists in this country concerning violence that's committed by the so-called transgender population. There's simply no good way to track it, and no one's even trying. The federal government doesn't maintain any kind of database that lists crimes by trans-identifying individuals. They probably should have that database. We obviously need one, but one doesn't exist at the moment. Media outlets are terrified of stigmatizing the quote-unquote trans community. And so, for all practical purposes, we only ever hear about a violent crime committed by a trans-identifying individual if there's a mass casualty event in which many people are either murdered or seriously injured. And then it becomes much harder to cover up, which means that in those cases, that's the only time we'll actually hear about the transgender connection, even though in those cases also, of course, the media doesn't want to talk about it. And yet, even with that caveat in mind, it's not hard to see that the trans population is quite prolific when it comes to antisocial and violent and often deadly behavior. In 2018, Snokia Mosley, a self-identified transgender individual, killed several people at a Rite Aid distribution facility in Maryland. Authorities said Mosley had, quote, been beset for years by mental illness as well as emotional turmoil related to her struggle with sexual identity. Her struggle. In 2019, a self-identified transgender boy named Alec McKinney masterminded a school shooting that left one student dead and several more injured. McKinney said that she wanted to kill her classmates because they didn't respect her gender identity. In 2022, Anderson Lee Aldrich shot up a nightclub, killing 5 people and injuring 26. His lawyer said in court that he was non-binary, used they-them pronouns, preferred to be addressed as Mix, MX Aldrich. In 2023, 40-year-old Kim Brady Carricker killed 5 people and injured 2 children when he opened fire in a Philadelphia neighborhood. Authorities denied that the man was transgender, even though he posted numerous photos online in which he's wearing women's clothing. The same year, as we all remember, a trans-identifying mass shooter killed 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults at Covenant Christian School in Tennessee. And then in 2024, a man named Colin Bailey, who pretends to be a woman and who uses the name Mia, admitted to killing his parents and showed no remorse for that whatsoever. All of these stories made the news to varying degrees because they were too high profile, too dramatic, too horrifying to ignore. The media can successfully bury a story about a few girls getting stabbed in a movie theater, but it's harder to explain away a large number of fatalities. And this is why when you're looking at crime rates generally, as we've talked about before, it's best to look at homicides rather than, say, car thefts or assaults, because they can monkey with the stats when it comes to car theft, assault, that sort of thing, pretend that those numbers are going down when they really aren't. It's more difficult for authorities to hide bodies than to hide evidence of other crimes. And that's why this graph, which was posted yesterday by one of the big data accounts on X, is worth taking a look at. As you can see, it shows mass shooting rates by demographic from 2015 to 2025. It looks at public incidents with 4 or more fatalities, and it accounts for the percentage of the population that belongs to each demographic group. So it's a per capita reading, essentially. Now, at the very top of that list, as you'll see, you find men who identify as transgender women or non-binary. They're followed by women who identify as men or non-binary. After that, there's Asian men, includes Arabs, Black men, white men, Asian women, and Hispanic men rounding out the list. In other words, when you look at per capita statistics, transgender identifying individuals are the single most likely demographic group in the entire country to commit deadly mass shootings that cause 4 or more fatalities. Now, you could quibble with the numbers if you want, but this is a finding that, if we're being honest, everyone can intuitively understand. It's not surprising. After all, it's not exactly a great shock that men with delusions who are given unnatural cross-sex hormones and other life-altering drugs and mind-altering drugs instead of treatment for their delusional mindset will be prone to violence. Affirmation does not help at all. As the ACLU's own attorney admitted to the Supreme Court this year, there's no evidence that coddling these people somehow reduces suicide rates. On the other hand, there's a lot of evidence that when you affirm somebody's deranged fantasies, you empower psychopaths to act on those same fantasies. And more to the point, when you tell someone that their fantasy is true and that it's an inextricable part of their identity, and that anyone who denies their fantasy is therefore a threat to them, is guilty of even a trans genocide, and so on, you are giving them all the excuse they need to go and commit violence against the people who pose this quote-unquote threat. And that's exactly what took place yesterday at Annunciation Catholic School. The shooter, who killed 2 children, ages 8 and 10, and injured more than a dozen others, was not tormented by his parents because of his alleged gender identity. There was no lack of affirmation going on. In fact, he wasn't told the truth, which is that he's a man. Instead, he was affirmed every step of the way. His family members pretended that he was a woman. His mother signed off on his name change in court when he was a minor for the explicit purpose of helping him identify as a woman. That took place in 2019. According to the court documents, the shooter, quote, identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification. Now, on top of that, his uncle was reportedly a lawmaker who claimed the LGBTQ community was under attack and that people's identities are no one's business. His uncle also maintained that Lincoln would have supported transgender children in an op-ed that was published a couple of years ago. But in the end, none of this affirmation solved the shooter's underlying problem, which is that he was a deeply evil and severely mentally disturbed individual, a delusional and hateful person. He posted a lengthy video online, which made it very clear that he despises Christianity. He was using an image of Jesus Christ for target practice. He wrote things like, "Where's your God?" on his rifle magazines. He also suggested that he had lung cancer, which was evidently yet another delusion. As we've seen since COVID, there's a definite relationship between being a left-wing radical and being a hypochondriac. So all of these factors came together in this case. But instead of throwing this guy in a psychiatric ward where he obviously belonged, Democrats, leftists told him that he was on the right track. And more than that, they also encouraged him and people like him to commit acts of violence. Here, for example, is a recent photo of Peggy Flanagan, the lieutenant governor of the state of Minnesota. And you can see it there on the screen. She's wearing a shirt that says "Protect Trans Kids," and the shirt features a giant knife pointing sideways. Now, there's only one way to interpret that. This is a threat of violence from a public official saying that you will suffer physical harm if, like the Catholic Church, you reject the idea that children can change their gender at will. It's explicit, direct threat. And yesterday, a trans foot soldier made good on that threat. After the attack on the church yesterday, Peggy Flanagan didn't apologize for any of this rhetoric. Of course, she didn't say that she regretted the fact that she threatened Catholics with violence after children were slaughtered as they prayed in a Catholic church. Instead, she put out a generic message thanking first responders. And again, she knew exactly what she was doing. The whole party does. CNN had an expert on the air to explain all the details about the shooter's background. And see if you can spot what detail he left out. Watch.
CNN's John Miller has some brand new reporting on this. John, tell us what you're learning.
Well, we've been looking into the shooter who law enforcement sources have identified as Robin Westman. And police have been examining some of the postings online by an individual of the same name, presumed to be the same individual. Which shows numerous weapons, magazines, things in preparation for the shooting, along with a book and different notes. But one of them is particularly telling in that it says, "I have waited for this for so long. I am not well. I am not right. I am a sad person, haunted by these thoughts that do not go away. I know this is wrong." And he goes on to describe that the action he is going to take against this world before taking his own life, which is not uncommon in these incidents, these active shooter scenarios where you see someone who reports to be in pain, in trauma, and that they write all of this out and leave it behind with the foreknowledge that what they're about to do is going to end their own life as well. While taking these strangers, these innocent people, with them in the process. But investigators are going back through this material and a lot of other material trying to determine motive. So what do we know? I mean, what we know, if this in fact is from the shooter, that his motive was he was in pain. But what we don't see here, and there's more to go through, is what was the shooter, Robin Westman, in pain about specifically?
That is CNN's chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst. And he really did a deep dive there, didn't he? he managed to tell us everything about the shooter except the one thing that would explain his mental state and his motive. Even though everybody online had already figured it out, this chief intelligence analyst was flummoxed. He couldn't figure it out. It's all incredibly fake and phony. You wonder how they say any of this with a straight face. This is the kind of unwatchable coverage that CNN produced all day. Another CNN expert actually went out of her way to dispute the idea that religion had anything to do with the attack, that there was any motivation, that the killer was motivated at all by any animus towards the Catholic faith. Watch.
So I think that the question of what the charges are is something that we want to talk about, but I think that the facts have to lead to that. And it's not the essence of taking, in this case, a kid who probably sat in the pew at that church when he went to school there, and saying, oh, for some reason he has some particular bent against Catholics or against Christians. There would have to be some pushed together, gathering together effects that would really kind of indicate that this entire intent of this crime was to injure this particular people of this particular religion, just much like we see the shooter in the top shooting in Buffalo who went there, a white man who went there to shoot blacks and made it very clear that that's why he was going there.
Now, there was also a police official who said something similar to this. Who's to say whether the shooter was motivated by anti-Catholic or anti-Christian animus? It's not like he just shot up a Catholic church. It's not like he mocked God in his manifesto. It's not like trans ideology is itself an attack on Christianity. It's not like he drew a sketch of the church on video and then stabbed it with a knife. According to CNN, the target was totally random. I mean, he might as well have shot up the local Applebee's or something. I won't even play MSNBC's coverage because it's too unbearable, even by the low standards set by outlets like CNN. They demanded Australia-style gun confiscation, of course. That's their preferred result here. Meanwhile, ABC News reported that Donald Trump's name was written on one of the gunman's firearms without providing any context. Watch.
23-year-old Robin Westman was able to leave what police called a video manifesto that they're now going through to try and establish motive. We've also been going through it and can tell you there are crude diagrams of the church. There are also photos of the weapons, and they include all sorts of writings, the names of past mass shooters, criticism of Israel, the name of President Trump written on the guns. There are also racial slurs, nihilistic statements, all painting the picture of a disturbed individual who carried out this mass shooting on the first week of school at the Annunciation Church in Minneapolis.
Now, the only reason to say something like that without clarifying that the shooter said F Donald Trump is to imply, obviously, that the shooter might have supported Trump. It's every bit as malicious and unconscionable as it looks. Even when a trans-identifying lunatic commits one of the most heinous acts imaginable, they go right to work trying to find clever new ways to lie about it. The effeminate mayor of Minneapolis, for his part, set the standard here. He held a press conference in which he declared that trans people are really the real victims of the mass shooting. It was reminiscent of the Biden administration's press conference after the Covenant massacre, where they said that they would defend transgenderism. That was their main priority, even though Christian children had just been executed by a trans person. Watch.
I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
Well, this man is truly just a pathetic, shameless piece of garbage. I mean, at this point, you're tempted to root for the inbred Somali who's running for Jacob Fry's seat. At least his election will accelerate the downfall of Minneapolis, and then sane people can move in, take control, and rebuild whatever's left. The level of shamelessness that's required to go out there as Catholics lay dead and dying to defend the ideology of the shooter, it's actually hard to comprehend. But for Jacob Fry, it was effortless, came naturally. Now, what Fry should have said, if he had any interest in protecting children and doing his job, what everyone should be saying and acknowledging at this point is that every single trans person is by definition mentally unwell. And this was recognized by everyone and by the entire psychiatric community up until very, very recently. Because any man who thinks he's a woman or woman who thinks she's a man is, again, by definition delusional to a potentially dangerous degree. Without exception, these are mentally sick people, and doctors should be legally barred from affirming their mental illness in any way, adult or child. This is yes, protecting children from so-called gender affirmation procedures and drugs is very important. But as I've said this entire time, it's not just children. Doctors, psychiatrists, therapists should be legally barred from affirming the delusions of anyone, whether they're an adult or child. It doesn't suddenly become okay because the person is an adult. And I think everyone knows this. It's always obvious. You know, nobody ever, aside from the people who actually suffer from the mental illness, no one else ever actually believed trans ideology. No one actually believed this. No one ever really believed that it's a good idea to take someone who's confused about their identity and give them castration drugs, tell them that they're, that their delusions are true. No one really believed that. No one ever believed that. And now innocent children are dying because so many people were too cowardly to admit it. All across the country, it's now abundantly clear that trans terrorism is an epidemic. Many of us warned that it would come to this. None of this was hard to foresee. That's what makes it all the more infuriating. When you affirm the perverse fantasies of disturbed people, and you do it systematically, at scale, you are creating precisely this kind of catastrophe. It is inevitable. And now these catastrophes are happening so often that even for the mainstream press, they're impossible to ignore. But there is a solution. It's not that far away, actually. We've almost achieved it. As the last election demonstrated very clearly, the trans agenda is losing. They're losing on every playing field in every area of American life. We have defeated them politically. We have defeated them culturally. It's been one loss after another after another. It's now widely understood that we don't need gun control. We need transgender control. We need to finally eliminate this demonic and anti-Christian ideology from the planet for good. But understand this, because of our success, now is precisely the moment when trans militants are the most dangerous, because they've lost, the game is over, they know it, and now they're more desperate than ever, more full of hatred and anger than ever. They're going down, but they'll take as many sane, normal people with them as they can. As horrifying as yesterday's attack was, it's almost certainly going to get worse from here. I hate to say it, but it's true. So be on your guard. Take every possible step to protect yourself and your family, particularly if you live in a state like Minnesota. Your leaders will not protect you. If a trans militant murders you or your child in a pew, they will dance on your graves and blame you for your own death. Like the Bolsheviks before them, they will celebrate the murder of any Christian man, woman, or child. You can only rely on yourself, at least until the day that the scourge of trans ideology is eradicated for good. Now, every Christian, along with every man who values civilization itself, must do everything in our power to ensure that this hideous agenda is indeed banished to the depths of hell, which is where it originated and where it belongs. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of September 2024, GCU meets you where you are, provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Big Bird is dead. Okay, maybe not literally, but PBS just lost its government funding, which means say goodbye to taxpayer-funded woke programming. MSNBC panicked over the idea that without Elmo and other left-wing programming, America's families might turn to PragerU instead. Well, they're right to be worried. Every day, more and more people are turning away from woke content and finding truth, values, and common sense through PragerU. Here's the thing. PragerU doesn't take a dime from Washington. Every dollar comes from people like you who care about truth, values, and raising kids who think for themselves. PragerU videos reach millions of people every day, especially young people, and they're changing minds at scale. Parents are noticing, families are rejecting indoctrination and finding content they can actually trust. Stories about faith, freedom, and personal responsibility, lessons your tax dollars will never reach. Best part is, it's all free, but PragerU can't grow without your help. If you want to make an impact on the next generation, this month is the perfect time to support PragerU. Every dollar given will be triple matched. That's right, triple. Donate now at PragerU.com/DW and triple the impact of your gift. That's PragerU.com/DW. All right, actually, we aren't really going to have a 5 headline segment today. I want to focus on the shooting. There's a lot to be said about that, and I'll get back to that in the closing segment, which isn't really a cancellation today because it seems a little too glib to turn a mass shooting into a daily cancellation, but we'll get back to that. I did want to mention one other thing in between here. Give us a bit of a break. I wanted to talk about this briefly. We've been talking about flag burning on the show this week after Trump's executive order. And I've said that, I agree with Trump. I don't think that burning the flag should be legal. Well, a number of people have taken the opportunity for a gotcha. They really got me. They got me this time, boy. They got me. James Lindsay is one of them when digging through my old tweets and found that back in 2019, I actually had the opposite opinion. Back then, I thought that burning the flag should be legal. And so he tweeted out some screenshots comparing, you said that back then, and now you're saying this. And he has me dead to rights on that. I fully admit it. I changed my opinion. I did. And then one of my posts on X about the flag burning thing got community noted. The community noters got to work, and they left this note, which says, Matt Walsh has repeatedly, without equivocation, said burning the flag is protected by the First Amendment and should not be banned. And they linked to 3 old tweets, all from 2019. Now a bunch of people are really enjoying this gotcha. In fact, according to them, this proves that I'm a grifter. A grifter, it's a grift. As we know, people on social media have a vocabulary of like 4 words, and grifter is 3 of them. Everyone's a grifter now. Everything is a grift. If you disagree with someone, they're a grifter. Everything is, it's all a scam. No one is actually saying their real opinions about anything. And if you change your opinion about something, watch out. That grifter central right there. Now I'll read my old tweets to you, the ones that they dug up. So this is me back in 2019. 3 of them. The argument that burning the flag isn't protected by the First Amendment because it's offensive and gross seems very similar to the argument that assault rifles aren't protected by the Second Amendment because they're loud and scary. Emotional and irrational arguments. Then I also said, I think burning the flag is stupid and gross, but obviously it's free speech. Free speech doesn't include desecrating a piece of cloth is a really weird position that cannot be intellectually justified. And then finally, I tweeted this in response to Michael Knowles, who I was arguing with on Twitter at the time. But burning the flag doesn't abolish or harm the country in any way. It just makes people very emotionally upset. And speech that makes people very emotionally upset is the only speech that needs to be protected. So that's what I said back in 2019, 6 years ago. And now I'm saying something different. What accounts for the change? Well, I just want to explain this to anyone who's disturbed or confused. And see, what happened is that I changed my mind. I had one opinion, but upon further reflection, I changed my opinion so that it's a different opinion, which is something I do sometimes. Actually, I do it a lot. This scandal goes even deeper. It goes deeper than James Lindsay realized. I changed my opinion a lot. It's happened like many times. And in particular, if the facts on the ground change or if new information or events reveal themselves, then my opinion will also change. So what changed on this topic? Well, you know, what was the main reason for arguing? Like, what was the main this week when I've made the point that burning the flag should be illegal? What was the main reason that I gave? What was my main argument? What did I say on my show and in X posts on the topic this week? Well, I said pretty clearly that in a country where people are prosecuted for desecrating pride flags, in that country, it should be illegal to burn the American flag, because I refuse to live in a country where the symbols of gay pride are more protected than our national flag. That's my argument. So what changed? Well, over the past 6 years, American citizens have been prosecuted for burning LGBT flags. American citizens have been prosecuted for leaving tire marks on gay pride crosswalks that are painted on public streets. Now, to my knowledge, before 2019, nobody had ever been prosecuted for driving over a rainbow crosswalk. Or if they had, I didn't know about it. But since then, that has happened on multiple occasions. And in light of that, my opinion has shifted. If we lived, and I said this a few days ago, if we lived in a libertarian, absolutist, free speech utopia, my stance on burning the American flag would probably be different. And I said that this week. But we don't live in that country. We don't. We live in a country where hate speech laws exist. We live in a country where the LGBT pride flag is protected by law. You know, and you can be intentionally obtuse about it and say, well, that's not true. They weren't, the people that were prosecuted for driving over a pride crosswalk. It wasn't because it was a pride symbol. It's because they were, destroying public property or whatever. Okay. Just, that's nonsense. I know it's nonsense. When they go after someone for burning the LGBT flag or for driving over the pride crosswalk, they may come up with some other pretense, but the reason they're doing it is because it was a gay pride thing. We all know that. So effectively, in this country, the gay pride symbols are protected by law. And we all know that. Again, I just don't have patience for this thing where, like, I'm talking to someone and we all know the reality, but they're going to pretend that we don't know it. It's like, okay. Now, I know the response to this point is that, well, okay, then we should stop prosecuting people for desecrating gay flags. Let's have more speech, not less. I've heard that argument. That's an argument that Seth Dillon was making. He's also does not agree with me, and he was making that point. More speech, not less. So my point is not an argument for making it illegal to burn the American flag, but it is rather an argument for not prosecuting people who desecrate the symbols of gay pride. And I agree. We should stop that. We should stop prosecuting people for desecrating gay pride symbols, but and we should not have hate speech laws. I agree also with that. But that's not the reality, right? We shouldn't prosecute people for desecrating the symbols of gay pride, but we do. Hate speech laws shouldn't exist, but they do. They just do. Okay, so the fact that they shouldn't, we should just make it so that's not the case. Well, but it is the case. Okay, it is actually the case. So right now at this moment, that's the case. And so right now at this moment, at a moment when hate speech laws exist and you can go to jail for desecrating a gay flag, and if you drive over a great gay pride crosswalk, they're going to launch a manhunt to find you and drag you to jail. At this moment, when all of that stuff is the reality, do I think that the American flag should have fewer protections than the LGBT flag? No. I'm dealing in reality. Not what ought to be, but what actually is. What really actually is. I've said the same thing about hate crimes. I don't think hate crime laws should exist. But they do. And if they do, which they do, then they should be enforced equally. So I think that when a black person attacks a white person, that should be prosecuted as a hate crime. And you can say, well, no, it shouldn't be, because I don't think hate crime laws should exist. But they do exist, though. They do actually exist. And since they exist, they should be applied equally. That's it. One standard for everybody. That's my position. So my opinion has changed, but I also want to say this, whether you agree with my opinion now or not, whether you think it's reasonable that my opinion changed or not, doesn't matter. Like, we have to stop doing this ridiculous thing where we treat changing your mind like it's a scandal. I mean, this is by far one of the dumbest aspects of modern political debate. I'm just annoyed by it, which is why I'm kind of ranting about it now. I'm used to it. I mean, and every aspect of modern political debate is very dumb and fruitless, and it makes debating basically pointless. But this is probably the dumbest, because changing your mind is healthy. Change is part of life. A changing mind is a living, active mind. If your mind never changes, it means your mind is not alive. It means your mind is dead. You're not thinking. You're not actively contemplating the issue. Now, sure, if your mind changes constantly, wildly, from one extreme to another, then that's a sign that you're indecisive, flighty, and fickle. If your mind changes back and forth depending on the audience you're speaking to or whatever is popular at the moment, then that's a sign that you're a hypocrite. So yes, in those cases, changing your mind can be a symptom of a deeper issue. It can be a red flag, but that's not how we look at it these days. These days, we've decided that if you change your mind ever on any topic at any point for any reason, it makes you some sort of con artist. Like, it's supposed to be a source of embarrassment. I mean, I've had people digging up stuff I said literally 13 years ago and saying, oh yeah, well, this is what you said back then. Yeah, that was more than a decade ago. Has your mind not changed at all in a decade? Did you settle on one set of opinions over a decade ago and just stick with those opinions no matter what? Did you decide in like 6th grade, well, like, here are my opinions. Sorry, folks, these are my opinions. They'll be my opinions forever. I will never have any other opinions but these. Here's a list of my opinions. I have 42 opinions, and I will never have any other opinions but those opinions. Is that what you did? If so, then I would say, how is that not the more embarrassing thing? And in my case, I think anyone who's followed my work over the years will agree that I've largely been very consistent. My fundamental principles and beliefs have not changed really at all. My core issues today were my core issues 15 years ago. But downstream from that, my thinking has changed to some extent on some issues. And the biggest change is that, and I fully admit this, I have become a lot more right-wing over the past 5 or 6 years. This is another thing that people do, and kind of a gotcha, as I guess more proof that I'm a grifter or something. They'll pull up examples and they'll show that, I'm even more extreme to the right now than I was. Well, here's what you were back in 2018. Well, yeah, since COVID and the George Floyd riots and the 2020 era of LGBT, the LGBT woke crusade, 2020s wokeness and all that, since those things, I've become even more right-wing. I've always been right-wing. I mean, 10 years ago, I was still much further to the right than most people. You can Google what people were saying about me in 2014 when I was just a blogger, and I was still back then considered a right-wing extremist. But over the past 5 or 6 years, I've become even more right-wing. I was already pretty radical by most standards, but even from that starting point, the 2020 era was radicalizing even for me, just as it was for a lot of people. And the other thing, and this is really as we finally, 15 minutes into it, I get to my real point, that the other thing that's happened over the past 5, 6, 7 years for me that can account for, if you've noticed some shifts, wow, you're an even bigger right-wing lunatic now than you were back then. If you've kind of noticed that. The other thing, aside from these big national, and global events, is that I've had more kids, over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I've been a dad for a lot longer. In 2019, I had 3 kids, all under the age of 7. Now I have 6 kids ranging from the ages of 2 to 12. So I've been a parent for, 12 going on 13 years. A lot of kids. And that has radicalized me even more. You know, I mean, try it sometime. Try being a conservative, then having like 6 kids and not turning into a militant right-wing radical. It's impossible. I'm telling you, the most radically right-wing people you will ever meet, even if they're not loud about it, even if they're not loudmouths like I am, but the most radically right-wing people you'll ever meet is go to a church, go to a reverent traditional Catholic church sometime. Look for the family, like the young family with 5+ kids, and the dad that's sitting there in the pew is guaranteed to be about as far to the right as you can possibly be on every single issue. And so is his wife, by the way. When you're the head of a large family or even a not so large family, and it's your job to protect and provide for your family and to see to their physical, financial, and spiritual well-being, it changes you. It completely shifts your priorities. It just does. And now for me, the guiding principle, the core of my agenda, my project is that, as I said to Tucker when I was on his show a few months ago, I want my children to go to heaven, and I want them to live in a good, healthy, thriving country. If I want to decide whether I support something or not, I ask myself, do I want my children to live in a country where this kind of thing is happening? Is it good for my kids? Is it good for their well-being? That's my first consideration. And it overrides all other considerations. I'll be honest with you. All other considerations. That's why when it comes to something like weed, it's another topic where I've changed my opinion. I've become more right-wing on that. 2018, 2019, I was more libertarian. Okay, let's legalize it. Now my opinion is eradicate it, throw everyone in jail who sells it, get rid of it, ban it everywhere. Okay, that's my opinion now. And why has it changed? Well, there's a lot of reasons. But the number one reason is that I don't want my kids to live in a country where they can't walk down the street without smelling the stench of this disgusting stuff and seeing potheads wandering around in a daze everywhere. I don't want my kids to live in that country. I don't want my kids to live in a community where everybody's high and where there's like a smoke shop, a weed shop on every corner. I don't want that country. I don't want that country for my kids. So I want the stuff banned. And you might say, but I have a right to, I want it. Yeah, I don't care. That's why any argument you make is a non-starter for me. I don't care. It's not good for my kids. And I care about them more than I care about you. I care about them more than I care about whatever you want. Yeah, but I want to smoke weed. I don't care about that. It's a whole lot worse for my kids if they live in that kind of society. That's what I care about. How does this relate to the flag burning topic? Well, again, I don't want my kids to live in a country where degenerate, filthy, green-haired freaks are burning the flag in the street. Really is that simple. You might say that it's too simple. You might say that I should have a more intellectual, nuanced view of the topic. Well, I don't. This is my view. Those people are my enemies. They're enemies of my family and my country. They want me and my family and my country destroyed. Very specifically, by the way, like many of them have been very explicit that they want my family personally and specifically to be destroyed. That's another radicalizing thing, by the way. When you get to the point where you've got like a Bible length binder of all of the very explicit death threats against you and your family. That's another thing. Where you look at that and you say, wow, these people actually want my kids to die. They really do want that. And they would kill them themselves if they had the opportunity. When you see that, you say, okay, well, that's it. These people are my enemies. And I'm not going to defend their right to desecrate my country's flag. I'm not going to defend them at all. And if they're doing something, then I probably oppose it. I oppose everything they stand for and everything they do. Because they're enemies of me, my family, and my country. And that's it. Now, you could say, well, you should have a more principled position than that. I don't know. I think, to me, that's the most principled position a man can have. Is that I'm going to do what's best for my family and my country. All other considerations be damned. We've all heard common myths like we only use 10% of our brains, but here's one that might surprise you. Thread count is a huge myth that many people believe when shopping for sheets. Thread count is simply a measure of fabric density and isn't actually a good indicator of quality. If you want truly great sheets, you need to look at thread quality, not count. That's why Boll & Branch focuses on using the highest quality organic cotton threads, creating long-lasting sheets that actually get softer over time, rather than relying on inflated thread count numbers to impress customers. Boll & Branch's sheets are crafted from the finest 100% organic cotton in a soft, breathable, and durable weave that delivers quality you can feel from the moment you touch them. What makes them even more special is that they become softer with every wash, improving over time rather than wearing down. With their 30-night worry-free guarantee, you can experience this exceptional comfort risk-free, ensuring you'll love how those premium sheets transform your sleep experience. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep can make with Boll & Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/Walsh. That's Boll & Branch, BOLLAND branch.com/Walsh to save 15% and unlock free shipping. Exclusions apply. Here's a not-so-fun fact. Disney+, Hulu, Netflix, Paramount+, they're all raising prices again. I'm sure you've noticed. And then there's DailyWire Plus doing what we love to do, the exact opposite. We're not raising prices, we're dropping them. And right now you can grab an annual DailyWire Plus membership for 40% off with code SUMMER. That unlocks everything we've got, including new episodes of The Pope and the Fuhrer, The Secret Vatican Files of World War II. And then on September 8th, the Isabel Brown Show as well. Plus, you'll get exclusive first looks at our brand new flagship show, Friendly Fire, where the entire Daily Wire crew goes head-to-head, live, uncensored, unfiltered. Go to DailyWirePlus.com right now and lock in 40% off your annual memberships before the deal is gone. There's another element of yesterday's attack specifically relating to the aftermath of the shooting that needs to be discussed. If you currently have any doubt as to the level of anti-Catholic and anti-Christian disdain that's held by the corporate press and Democrat activists and politicians, this is the moment to disabuse yourself of those notions. These people despise believers in Jesus Christ. They see the deaths of Christians, including children, as an opportunity to gloat, to mock, and to assert their own very misguided and pathological sense of superiority. You cannot understand trans ideology without recognizing that it's an explicitly anti-Christian ideology. And yesterday, the supporters of this ideology all but admitted that. And we'll start with the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. We played part of this press conference earlier, the portion where he insisted that transgenderism had nothing to do with the massacre. But as he continued, Frey went further. He also stated very directly that prayer is not an appropriate response to the killings of children, because after all, the children in the church were praying when the trans psychopath shot them to death. And yet, despite the fact that they were praying, they were killed. And therefore, don't talk about prayer anymore. That's actually what he said. Watch.
Those families are suffering immense pain right now. Think of this as if it were your own. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
Now, there are two possibilities here. The first possibility is that Jacob Frey is under the impression that Christians pray in order to generate some kind of force field around themselves, rendering them impervious to any form of harm. Maybe he genuinely believes that. Now that two children are dead and many more were seriously wounded, it's a great opportunity to point out that, in fact, prayer does not make you immune to bullets. The other possibility, which is obviously what actually happened here, is that Jacob Frey, number one, realizes that that's not what Christians actually believe. No Christian thinks that just because you pray that you're not going to be potentially the victim of violence. So Jacob Frey is, in reality, a godless communist who will take advantage of any perceived opportunity, no matter how ghoulish it may be, to denigrate Christians and their faith. Even if it means mocking children who were just killed in a church, which is what he was doing. He's actually mocking the victims. The killer himself, one of his wrote on one of his manifesto or whatever, one of his videos, where's your God now? And that's basically what Jacob Frey was saying. He was echoing the killer himself. And he'll dance with the local Somali horde. He'll weep at the grave of St. George Floyd and pretend to revere Islamic customs. But when it comes to Christians, he wants you to know that in his view, prayer is completely pointless and embarrassing. It's just going to make you a bigger target for these psychopathic child killers that the Democrats deliberately incite at every opportunity. So why do it? That's Jacob Frey's position. He won't say a word about the domestic terror threat that's obviously posed by trans ideology, but he'll happily tell you to stop trying to communicate with God because he doesn't think God exists. That's really what he believes. And it's not an understatement to say that the entire Democrat Party believes this. They all lined up one by one to communicate the exact same message yesterday. Here's Joe Biden's former spokesperson, Jen Psaki, quote, "Prayer is not freaking enough. Prayer does not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safer sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring those kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers." Psaki then had this meltdown on her show, which nobody watches, but they keep it on the air anyway. But we can see the clips anyway. And here it is. Watch.
And all they should be hoping to do is have someone to sit with at lunch or someone to play with on the playground. And they should be waiting to hear an update when they get home. And that is not what these parents at this school experience today. Sorry, this is a tough one. Having your child killed while they are sitting in a pew for a morning prayer service is not what any parent should have to worry about. And I have felt a mixture of anger and a lot of anger and emotional exhaustion about this today, as I'm sure many of you have, because we have been here so many times. And yet again, like clockwork, half of the politicians in our country have little more to offer than thoughts and prayers. That is all they are offering. Join all of us in praying for the victims, was Vice President J.D. Vance's response today. That's what he said. That's it. Please join me in praying for everyone involved, Trump wrote. We have seen this play out over and over again. There is a shooting, then come the thoughts and prayers, and then comes the attempt to shift the focus. This is what always happens. You're going to start seeing narratives. You're already seeing them. They're already out there about how the shooter was trans. You're going to see narratives about how the shooter appeared to be anti-Trump and anti-Semitic.
She's explicitly attacking the president and the vice president for praying for children who were just shot in church. That's what she's doing, as she pretends to cry. This is a new moment in American politics. This country was founded by Christians of European descent specifically. At no other point in our history would we openly mock a basic practice that's common not only in Catholicism, but in every faith. But that's what's happening now. The idea, of course, is not simply that prayer is useless, according to Jen Psaki. She's also implying that beyond prayer, there's nothing the Republicans are proposing. She's suggesting that we don't intend to actually do anything else. But she's wrong there. There's a lot of things we can do. We can classify transgenderism as a mental illness again. We can prevent gun stores from selling any firearms to somebody identifying as transgender. I mean, you want to talk about gun control when it comes to the trans terror threat? Well, okay. I mean, how about that? Is that what do you think about that compromise? We could reopen the asylums and we could put people there if they suffer from mental illness and delusions. We've also proposed that we should have armed security at every school. We should have armed security at churches. There's a lot of things that we've proposed. Of course, Jen Psaki wouldn't be happy with any of those steps. And that's why in that segment, she says that it's a false narrative to blame transgenderism for what happened. But really, treating transgenderism like a mental illness, which it is clearly the most practical way forward. It's very simple. But again, no one on the left seems to even consider this possibility. Instead, they spent the entire day mocking Christians one after another. It was completely relentless. This was a post from someone named Maxwell Alejandro Frost, for example. He apparently is a congressman in Florida. Quote, "These children were probably praying when they were shot to death at Catholic school. Don't give us your effing thoughts and prayers. Trump got rid of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Trump gutted the resources that were in place to keep our community safe." Oh, he gutted the Office of Gun Violence Prevention? Well, that's obviously why it happened. When gun violence happens now, it's obviously because people are saying, oh, well, the Office of Gun Violence Prevention doesn't exist. I guess we can go commit gun violence now. Well, tell me, Congressman, if that is what you really are. I've never heard of you. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention existed for how long exactly? I mean, I have no idea. I've never heard of it before. But for however long it existed, was gun violence happening when we had the Office of Gun Violence Prevention? Yeah, I think it was. But, they just can't help themselves. They hear about dead children, dead Christian children, and they can't bring themselves to utter an ounce of sympathy or concern or prayer. Instead, they deride the entire concept of prayer. If only we had the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. More bureaucracy. That would have solved the problem of psychopaths who become convinced that they were born in the wrong body. Former RNC chair Michael Steele agrees with that sentiment. He also decided to attack Christians yesterday. Watch.
I agree with the mayor. I'm not the thoughts and prayers. I'm so beyond that nonsense, the lie of that, because what we have are people who continue to stand in the way of actually doing something to stop the violence against their own kids. It is amazing to me. We watch young kids die in classrooms and now in church.
Prayer is nonsense, he says. He wouldn't say that in any other context, of course. He would never attack Muslims for praying. He doesn't want his studio to get blown up. But when he's talking about Christians, it just kind of rolls right off the tongue. A few days ago, you might remember that we talked about Jim Acosta's interview with the AI-generated version of a Parkland school shooting victim. The father behind that abomination popped up again yesterday, this time on CNN, and he too mocked the idea of prayer. Watch.
With us now is Manuel Oliver. Manuel's son, Joaquin Guac Oliver, was one of 17 who were killed in the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And Manny, you and your wife, Patricia, just celebrated Guac's 25th birthday that would have happened here just a few weeks ago. You know all too well what these parents who have lost kids are going through. What is on your mind? What should we be keeping a focus on at this moment?
Well, my initial thought is that I believe that thoughts and prayers this time are out of the picture. I mean, these kids were actually praying, and all their thoughts were placed on the right God that we're all praying to, and still they were shot. And so far, I believe 2 of them lost their lives.
Those children were praying to God, and still they were shot. Checkmate. I mean, this is how these people think. It's like they're pulling a gotcha moment on dead kids. It's one of the most revealing moments in modern political history. We all knew these people thought like this, but it's still extraordinary to see them all admit it one by one. They don't simply misunderstand the concept of prayer. They're willing to gloat on national television when children are shot to death as they're praying. The same line was repeated on social media as well. Here's how one account with roughly 1 million followers put it. Quote, praying is the problem here, not the solution. People use prayer instead of action. If prayer worked, a house of prayer wouldn't have just experienced this tragedy. And it's almost difficult to read these posts out loud. They're the kinds of things you'd expect to hear from someone in a padded room. I mean, saying that, well, if prayer worked, then you wouldn't have violence. The fact that something evil is happening at a church, that proves that it doesn't work. The church isn't working. I mean, it's like saying that the fact that there are sick people at a hospital proves that hospitals don't work. Medicine doesn't work because they're sick. No, it's like it's because there are sick people that we have hospitals. It's because there's evil in the world that we have churches, that we need prayer. But this is the talking point of the Democrat Party. They refuse to acknowledge that action is indeed very much on the table. And that action will involve prayer, no matter how much contempt they have for the idea of religion and for prayer. But it involves a lot of other things. It also involves the eradication of the trans agenda in the United States. The time for affirming the delusions of men who think they're women and vice versa has come to an end. This grand experiment, which many people have participated in, many of them because they thought they were forced to, is over. Contrary to what the entire Democrat Party believes, this is a Christian nation. And in Christian nations, we believe in the power of prayer. We also believe in facing evil and confronting it and defeating it, so that no more children have to die in the service of an evil ideology. We are witnessing the last gasps of that ideology. The desperation is disguised as mockery, and just like the mockery, their ideology of death and mutilation will soon come to an end. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. Godspeed.
Hey there, I'm DailyWire Executive Editor John Bickley.
And I'm Georgia Howe, and we're the hosts of Morning Wire.
We bring you all the news you need to know in 15 minutes or less.
Watch and listen to Morning Wire 7 days a week, everywhere you get your podcasts.